From electric vehicles to solar panels to future innovations, the global transition to clean energy is set to further heighten demand for critical minerals. According to the International Energy Agency, Sub-Saharan Africa's critical mineral riches, with an estimated 30% of global reserves, position it for as clean energy demand propels nickel demand to double, cobalt to triple, and lithium to rise tenfold by 2050. Well, I am now joined by Agesan Rajagopaul, partner, McKinsey Company, Africa. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and good morning.
All right, so we have an estimated 30% of global reserves in Africa. I mean, this is in charts played. Tell us more about it.
Yes, so this is quite exciting, right? So maybe to look at some of the specific metals opportunities that we're seeing, because these are big numbers that are being talked about, and be interesting to look at some of the opportunities and examples. So a couple of them that are quite exciting. You know, you got copper, which in Africa we have about 13% of world production, 6% of global reserves. And especially interesting in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia. And this is an important metal because it's important for a lot of electric cables, will be important for transmission networks, but also very critical for solar panels, for building wind turbines, and especially for electric vehicles and batteries. The other one is cobalt, which is obviously quite interesting from the perspective of batteries as well. Very important and key material from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Probably about 79% of the world's production from the DRC. And then another interesting commodity which we have a huge share of in Africa, and especially Southern Africa, South Africa and Zimbabwe, is the platinum group metals, which in the medium to longer term will be very important also in fuel cell vehicles and in hydrogen, which is a big part of the energy transition. So they're important catalysts in those technologies.
Well, talking about cleaner energy, I mean, we have electric vehicles, we have solar and some other things, hydrogen, like you talked about. Which of these things do you think, you know, the world is set to like sort of adopt holistically very soon?
Yes, so you're already seeing this quite a big pickup, right? So in renewables, that is happening, that is growing across the world. Also, where I live in South Africa, huge growth already that we've seen over the last 10 years, through the right supports of regulation and enablers. So that's growing. Renewables is there, the cost has come down. It's a massive area and very viable. Electric vehicles, much more in the short term, huge growth in Europe, driven by also the right infrastructure, the right incentives that have enabled growth there. A lot of the automotive players are investing in this and moving much more towards electric vehicles. Some of the other technologies like hydrogen fuel cells, much more longer term, probably beyond to 2030 and beyond, but a lot of investment right now in those technologies. In South Africa alone, there's 20 plus projects in hydrogen, both from electricity supply, energy supply, and also looking at the transportation side. So you got to look at these from different time horizons, but a lot already happened.
Absolutely. So how much of this potential within Africa is currently being harnessed?
Yeah, so when you look at the metal production, it's hard to say by numbers, just numbers, but some of the numbers I already mentioned. So you take we're actually, if you take cobalt, copper, we're actually harnessing more than even our global reserves. As I said, with copper, we're producing about 13% of the world's copper, but only 6% of the world's reserves. I think the key here is there's a lot of exploration to still be done in across Africa. And that's where we don't even know fully what the total reserves of some of these metals are across the continent. So a big push and a big drive that we need to make beyond building the mines that we already have found and discovered today, and developing these mines to be super competitive and efficient is investing in exploration, so that we can find new deposits and build new mines in these areas. So there's much more potentially than we even know, but exploration is needed to uncover that.
Interesting, talking about exploration. Well, I believe you're very familiar with South Africa. So what are the prospects there? And, what are the things the country is probably doing, either through policies or incentives, sort of, to harness its share of these critical minerals?
Yes, so a lot of countries, and then I'll come to South Africa, but a lot of countries are looking at what they have and their resources and how do they incentivize development. And the one that South Africa is developing and investing in quite big is on hydrogen. This will take time, but as I said, there's probably about 20 plus projects just across South Africa on hydrogen, from the hydrogen corridor for transportation to a number of steel projects, certain projects along the coast. So there's a lot of projects around this. And the way South Africa is thinking about it is we have the platinum group metals, and a large share of the world's global reserves, and high quality reserves that we have, and a big infrastructure in the value chain, from mining all the way to processing and refining. So the country is looking at how do we stimulate and develop the demand for this metal. And one of the things that is a big potential growth area is obviously the hydrogen sector. So that's how South Africa is doing it. I think there's also a lot of discussions and opportunities with neighboring countries as you think about logistics chains into the rest of Southern Africa, especially for copper, which is an important one for the DRC and Zambia.
All right, well, Sub-Saharan Africa stands to reap over 10% of these cumulated revenues, which could correspond to an increase in the region's GDP by 12% or even more by 2050. This isn't where Sub-Saharan Africa should play catch-up. Now, what must Africa do, and how soon, really?
Yes, so a few things we need to do across, and a few themes. Every country is different, every commodity is different based on the needs to help unlock the full potential. But a few common themes that we are seeing. One is around stability of regulation, because mining is a long game. It could take you 10 years or so, or even more, from starting exploration to actually building a mine. It could even take longer. So you need that stability of regulation around licensing, and both exploration licenses and operating mines to allow that long-term investment mindset from global mining companies and local mining companies. That's number one. Number two is infrastructure, because mining needs electricity and mining needs logistics to get the metals from the mine to the ports for export or to demand centers in the countries. And so infrastructure is important. Rail, road, very critical for that. And then one thing around energy, it's not just an important point around having enough supply and stability of supply, but also, given what we're talking about metals for the energy transition. You need also the power that's supplied to these mines to be of a low carbon nature. So that's why hydropower, renewable energy with storage will be important in this going forward, as compared to fossil fuels. So that's probably the two areas where it's most important. And then lastly, we need to continue to build the skills to be able to develop the mines and run these mines as efficiently as possible for long-term sustainability.
All right, so we're looking at any form of collaboration. For example, will AfCFTA or any other deal within the region be necessary to harness this potential, not just as individual countries, but as a continent? Or do you think Africa probably also needs to look beyond itself for help, or not necessarily help now, for some form of collaboration, really?
Yes, I think there's a few forms of collaboration that are going to be important. One is with the whole chain, the value chain, all the way down to the end customers. So, and the important collaboration here is to create the right standards and transparency, because you're supplying metals that go to automotive players in other parts of the world, right? And these customers have certain standards, or they will have certain standards and expectations in the future. So working with those customers and the automotive players downstream, as an example, to develop those standards and work backwards along the chain to our part of the value chain to make sure we meet those is going to be important. We can then build the mines, operate the mines in a way that meets those standards over the long term and not be reactive to it. So that's one area of important collaboration. The second area of important collaboration is around logistics, because in many cases you may need to transport these commodities, these metals across borders to get to ports or to get to certain infrastructure. So that's a second area of collaboration. How do we make sure that we can get these products once they're produced in the mine to the customer in a most efficient, reliable way? And then the third is on some downstream opportunities where there could be collaboration on developing more downstream processing capacity. So that's where there might be collaboration to develop certain processing hubs. For example, copper, you might develop in one of the countries a processing hub to build a big smelter or multiple smelters. But then having the collaboration across countries to combine demand or combine production to have enough scale is going to be important as well to collaborate on.
All right, so one of Africa's biggest challenges in resource utilization is the lack of beneficiation. Now, we have seen even in crude and agriculture, this has played out. So does this really bother you?
Yeah, so beneficiation can help because you create a higher value product that you then transport to the end customer. And this can be useful when you're looking at commodities which have a higher transportation cost. And isn't it better to beneficiate more of it, have a higher quality material, and then transport it long distances, given that it may be an expensive transportation cost? So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, which many are discussing, is around the fact that it creates more value add in the economy, which is true and important to consider. But I think this always needs to be looked at on a country by country, project by project level, because it is very important that any beneficiation is viable and is able to stand through many of the pricing cycles for these commodities, because most commodities have an up and down price cycle, and when you have that, you want to have resilience to it. So the challenge with beneficiation is that sometimes the margins can be lower, which means during difficult price periods they become under more pressure. So that needs to be considered. I think in the end, the main thing is we in Africa need to make sure that we fully develop our full potential on the geology side, on the mining side, and build the mines, because the mines are what you cannot move somewhere. You cannot just build a mine anywhere. It has to be where the geology is, where the metal is in the ground, and that's where we have the big strength. So everything we can do to unlock that is even more important.
But then data show that local processing options for critical minerals are too often limited in Sub-Saharan Africa. So for Africa to give the world something more than just minerals in their rock state, what do you suggest, Africa does? Or maybe you pick a country that you're more familiar with and sort of talk, knowing the nuances of that particular country, sort of.
Yes. So one example where you could do this is for example, in the copper belt, Zambia, DRC, because they have a large scale of copper in the ground. They're mining copper. That's where most of Africa's copper is mined. So that could be a place where you would do more of the downstream processing and build more of the capacity. That could create more global diversity for end customers to have another downstream supplier for the value chain. So that's how you could think about it. That's where there's an opportunity. Where there is big scale of mining, you could build the processing capacity, and that goes together and creates a lot more sustainability. So that would be the main point that we are seeing, and one example where there's an exciting opportunity, because it's important to have that security of supply and be close to the mines. To make sure that the logistics chains are also quite stable.
All right, well, looking at all of that, I'm just wondering if Africa sort of has the infrastructure and all that it takes really to do this right.
Yes, I think we have to invest in infrastructure. As I said, logistics, and energy. But two things I would just say that we have a huge opportunity on, not just the size of the reserves that we have, and even more potential if we do exploration. But one thing that I want to mention is on the quality of the products, the quality of what we mine. So in copper, for example, the grade, so the amount of copper that's found in the ore that we mine is very high, higher than the average globally. And that means that when you're processing it, you need to use less energy, less chemicals to get towards a higher purity, to get towards the final metal. Now, this is a big advantage when you're thinking about energy efficiency, carbon, all of that. And so that's where there's a huge potential as well to build on.
All right, so I'm also looking at the situation where we probably put some laws in place or policies in place to ensure some form of growth and all of that. So we don't have this imported, let's say, imported people. I said imported people. So we do not have, people coming in from other countries to develop some of those things for us. And then at the end of the day, we're left with nothing. In less than 30 seconds, how do we address that?
Yes, two things. One is capability building and making sure we have a clear plan. How are we going to get to a stage when we have more sustainability, more local talent? This takes time. It needs to be a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan. How are we going to move to that? And second thing, we need to use technology with the use of AI, digital, not only to help enable workers to make decisions with more insight, which can overcome and accelerate some of the capability development. It can also help us build skills through simulators, through simulating and getting employees to experience certain situations that they wouldn't experience live. So there's definitely a big opportunity from technology to help us overcome that point you mentioned.
All right, thank you so much, Agesan Rajagopaul, partner, McKinsey Company, Africa. Thank you for your thoughts on the show today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.